Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township, April 4th, 2023. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, if Phil could open us up in prayer.
Sure. Father in heaven, we pause at this time to give you thanks for the freedoms that we have and the many, many blessings that you have bestowed on all of us. We ask you to be with those who are going through difficult times, and we pray today earnestly that you'll be with each and every one of our trustees, give them wisdom, give them the gift of discernment, help them go through this meeting and give deep thought to every decision that they make, and every decision would be in the best interest of the good people of Bedford Township. And we pray all of these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, next is approval of the agenda. Within approval, I'd like to remove, make sure I get this one right, 8F. And the reason I want to remove 8F, there's been discussions and meetings since I placed this on the agenda, and the question come up is we're roughly $165,000 under on the construction portion. So we have a grant of roughly $1.1 million, and the construction right now is $930,000. So I asked the question, why can't we add the removal of the buildings and the cost to take them down as part of the construction? In doing that, that would keep us under the 175 as we've all wanted to be. And so I want to remove it and take it to MDOT and the road commission and see what we can do with that. So that's the reason why. Other than that, I'd like to approve the agenda as with the removal of 8F.
Motion to approve the agenda is amended.
Support. Okay, motion supported. Mr. Bruning, any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Ms. Janusek is absent. Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 6-0. Item 3, consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to approve and place on file A, minutes from the March 21st, 2023 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Okay, motion supported by Mr. Bruning. Any discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
I'll abstain as I was absent.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 5-1. Or, it's 5, no, I don't know, with one abstaining, I guess. Okay, up next is number 5, public comment. Comments limited to 5 minutes for board agenda items only, so please state the item and you'll be speaking on.
I'm assuming we can still speak since it was published on the agenda.
Nope, it's agenda items only. It's not an agenda item anymore. So anything else on the agenda, you're more than welcome to speak on.
Well, isn't that a fancy way to play your game?
Any more comments from the public?
Lamar Frederick, 3254 Deer Creek Drive. And this relates to the expansion of the veterans area. I'm all for that. Make a lot of room for us vets who need to be planted somewhere, but it gives me a little concern that my spouse wouldn't be able to be buried next to me. So we're going to do a cremation lot and one on top of the other. But I'm a little concerned about whether or not the spouses you could be buried next to Todd. That gives me some concern as to whether or not that's where you want to go. Your wife can't go next to you and yours either. If that's where you end up. Of course, you're going to end up some different places, I know. See you later.
Okay. Any more comments?
Josh Stump, 7178 Wiltshire Drive, 8C. Looking forward to that getting approved. It's a great organization. They do a ton of great things. I've been to a few fundraisers with them, and goes to a great cause. All's in, right? Yep, just making sure I get it right. So looking forward to that approval. Thank you.
Okay, any more comments? Okay, moving on to new business, 8A, vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger?
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General Fund, $92,612.75. Fire District Fund, $18,178.27. Fire Equipment, $781.47. Downtown Development, $95.14. Library Operating, $9,053.34. American Rescue Plan, $45,200.58. Enchanted Forest, $67,713.75. Canterbury Forest, $22,571.25. Whitman Drive, $4,172.40. Building Department, $2,021.31. Sewer O&M, $1,940.47. Trust and Agency, $11,140.97. For a grand total of $275,481.70.
Support. Motion is supported by Peroni. Any more discussion? Mr. Steiner?
Just want to ask about the American Rescue Plan, $45,000. That was for the wood chipper. Looking through the minutes of the last meeting, I don't see where it says where the money was coming from. Meeting minutes from the last meeting didn't say where the wood chipper dollars were coming from, whether it's general fund, buildings and grounds, ARPA, whatever. So where's the money coming from? I mean, it's obviously on the bills to pay.
I wasn't at the last meeting.
It's on the bills to pay ARPA. But see,
I was told it was coming out of ARPA.
okay,
That's why it's
and
there.
this is one thing that I've made my comments clear before, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but when he said we had the big ARPA plan, and I voted no on it, based on principle of there was no delegation of who was doing what, when, and where, and tracking appropriately. And I think it just sets a precedent that we've got the ARPA plan. If it's on there, well, then we'll just bring it back to the board and vote on it. So I think that this should have been done, but it should have said where the money was coming from on that vote.
So you're saying that we didn't delegate the ARPA funds for the chipper back when we did the ARPA funds?
No, there's nothing. That's a plan. That's not a delegation of exactly what we're spending. So, and that was my biggest concern, that we could just say, oh well, it's on the ARPA sheet. Let's just spend it and leave it as is. So, I mean, obviously, it's already been voted. It's been approved. We've got to pay the bill. I'll go ahead and I'm going to vote yes here to pay our bills, but that's one thing we need to be identifying correctly when this stuff comes up. Just because it was on the ARPA thing doesn't mean we should automatically take it out of there.
I voted no, Rick.
Because it's a moving target.
I didn't approve it.
That's all I've got on that.
Okay, could you call the roll?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passed 6-1. Item 8C, approve a resolution for a charitable gaming license for ALZ.
What about the Green Initiative?
Okay, B, appointment to the Green Initiatives Committee. I'm recommending to appoint Joe Lemkowski to the Green Initiatives Committee to a term ending 12/31/24. Mr. Lemkowski is a landscape designer and a graduate of The Ohio State University. At this time, the only committee that serves on the planning. At this time, the only committee he serves on is planning, sorry. So, that's my motion.
Support.
A motion is supported by Mr. Montry. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Peroni?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye.
Okay, the motion passes 6-0. Item 8C, approve a resolution for a charitable gaming license for ALZ.
So attaches a copy of the resolution, proof of the nonprofit status, and their bylaws. If the township board approves, they still will need to file an application with the state, which they will need to meet all the state requirements before actually receiving the gaming license.
If nobody else, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for charitable gaming license for ALZ as presented.
Support.
A motion is supported by Mr. Gore. Any more discussion?
I was just going
Montry?
to ask, I don't know if there's anybody here from there. I was just like curious, like what they were
A
doing.
couple people here from there.
Like,
Come on
I don't know if that's appropriate or inappropriate. Like, are we allowed to ask, like,
Yeah, if they want to come
what they're
on up.
actually doing?
Yes.
I think I've only ever approved one of these before. It was for the stadium. I was just like curious what you guys were doing for the fundraiser.
So what we would like to do, we're all's in. We raise funds for the Alzheimer's Association. We would like to have a fireworks raffle.
Okay.
So we need your approval for that, so we can apply for the,
What's a fireworks raffle?
like, it's just a big fireworks package, and we sell raffle tickets.
Okay. Like, so is it 50-50 tickets at the Bedford fireworks, or is it?
No, it's actually fireworks that we obtain ourselves.
Okay, so there's a raffle to win.
A fireworks
And then that's the fun.
package.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
What involvement will your husband have in the whole process with the organization and the raffle?
I mean, he helps me. I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Well, I'm just curious, is his involvement with the whole program, with your setup? Because it would make me a little nervous, to be quite honest with you.
Can I ask why?
I'm just saying the way I feel. I'm just being honest with you.
I mean, he does help me. I'm not going to stand here and say he doesn't, but we've been raising funds for the Alzheimer's Association for like 8 years, and we're pretty good at it.
Information we need to know about?
I mean, nothing that you couldn't find out on your own. So, but we can move on.
That's all I had. I was just curious, like what the event, if it was an event or like a public event or anything like that.
Okay.
That's
We have a
all.
motion and support. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 6-0. Okay. Moving on to 8D, accept a landscaping bid for the Bedford Township Library. Come on up.
Good evening, everybody. We have asked to hire a landscaping company to work on the front of the library because it has been not well done for many years. I want you to know that the staff of the library has done as much of that as they can on their own time, and also during time that they may have a brief moment that they can go out and do something. But I think that you all realize that when people move to our community, they move to our community because we have great schools, we have good buildings that are well taken care of, but if you get up close, things need to be done on a regular basis, and it's not always done on a regular basis, and I think I can attest to that even at my own home. that if you don't have something being taken care of all the time on a regular basis, like the pruning, the edging, the weed pulling, putting flowers in, in the spring and stuff, things get away from you very, very quickly. So we would like to keep the building looking great all the time. And that's why we would like to have a landscaping company come in and do the front of the building and around that area, prune, trim, edge, anything that it needs, because we're not getting it done. And because it's not been done, we've had to pull things out and replant things because it has not been done.
I've also talked to Pat Thatcher on this. He doesn't have an issue. And the problem that we've had for years and years, and it goes back to supervisors in the past, is that our facilities department has never been trained in landscaping to go ahead and how do you prune, how do you take care of things, and so on. So we lack that. We are changing that, but that's the problem that we have. If you'll notice that we're doing some things differently here, okay, at the building. But we are going to be educating the maintenance department so they can handle different things in the future. But they lack some of the skills right now to take care of some of this plant life. And if you don't do it right, you're going to kill it. And we invested money last year to go ahead and put new stuff in.
So what I would say to that is, why don't we focus on hiring somebody to just prune? Because that's been the main issue, and I'll make sure our guys are better about being over there on a regular basis to make sure that if things are mulched and kept up better.
I want you to know that I really don't have a problem with what you're saying, but for you to think that for all the areas that our maintenance people take care of, all the buildings, all the cemeteries, all the parks, that this will not happen all in 1 year. It's an overwhelming amount of work that would have to take place. And I think you're all aware of that if you drive around and look at the condition of some of the parks or some of the buildings or some of the trees. So we're just asking, let's give us a chance to at least get it started and in place. And then if we, in that time, we can get people trained to do it, then they will not be taking on an incomparable amount of work.
Well, I would just say the opposite. Why don't you give us a chance to meet with us and go over exactly what the expectations are? Because that hasn't happened, and I'll make sure it happens. I can't see us spending $7,000 when we have the people here that should be doing it. And if they're not doing it, then I need to be told that they're not doing it, and then I'll make sure it's done.
I think, my own viewpoint, that you don't understand the amount of hours this is going to take. And if you're going to put it on people in your community, you're going to look into a lot of overtime hours.
We're not going to pay overtime, but if you want to get me over there at the facility and walk me through exactly what you want, I'll make sure it's done.
I would really like the board to vote on this tonight and at least give us a chance. Does anybody else have any questions?
Aside from the comment that was made about we're doing things differently here, that seems to be a comment that could be applied to the library. What are we doing different here at this point?
Isn't that you?
Yeah. Do you want me to address that?
We have somebody dedicated to this building.
Exactly.
We plan to have somebody dedicated to the library this summer as well. Those are two things that we are changing. A lot's changing out front. We're tearing out old shrubs and getting things kept up the way that we're trimming a lot of trees. We're going to have an arborist spend a little bit of time with a couple of the employees to teach them how it should be properly done. So that's one of the main things. Mr. Montry?
Outside, I know you're not our labor attorney, Mr. Goldsmith, but is all we need, if we move forward on that, is all we need is a verbal from Mr. Thatcher, or do we need, like, to not be in any trouble with the labor union or anything like that?
Well, it's funny you brought that up because I was going to mention it. And what we need is an agreement from the collective bargaining unit that they do not object to that work being contracted out to another entity. So if it's work that is normally performed by our maintenance department and is now going to be contracted out to a private contractor. Al, you said you talked to Patrick, you didn't have a problem with it.
No.
I don't, and that's fine. I don't want it a verbal representation. I want it in writing from the union representative that represents that collective bargaining unit, that they approve this work being contracted out, and that it will not, in their view, constitute an unfair labor practice or something that could be the source of a grievance to the township. So that is essential.
Yeah, not that I think that either of us would be saying that, but that's just covering yourself. My other questions, the way the contract is written, it looks like it is referred to as annually, yearly, but I don't see anything that has any timeline. Like, is this a annual contract? Is this a 3-year, 5-year? I just don't see, I didn't see anything that said
Yearly.
It's just annual.
So this would just be for this year?
One year.
Okay.
I would like to say one more thing, because we have to look at government for the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. If this is something that we're expecting from our maintenance department, then let's train them on that we want it done.
Well, I guess that would have been my question, is I didn't understand just off of the contract, if this was, you're saying like, it's a lot of time and effort that's going to need to be put in. Is that how it's being viewed, as we just need to do this one time, once everything is cleaned up, then next year would be a lot more actual maintenance
Right.
of that, and this is unlikely that you would need to do this again next year and the following, or no, to really keep it the way it is, that in your guys' opinion you would want to do it annually, or is it a one-time deal?
I think we were looking at it as a one-time deal.
And then
And then be able to believe.
then the maintenance
and
department would be able to keep that, how that's
I'm
done.
not trying to take work away
No,
from
no,
them.
I'm just like,
I'm just
I'm trying
saying
to understand
that
for my vote.
they are overwhelmed now, and as in the past, when we've had them come over and do things, they don't get to spend a great amount of time. So, where are we going to spend that time? How are we going to divvy it all out so everything gets touched in some way? And if it gets touched in some way, then that means it's not probably going to get completed, is what I'm thinking. So if we had a year with a landscaping company that they could get us on the right road, they can get everything caught up, trees trimmed, pruned, things pulled out, things that needed to be done, then it'll give you a year to get everybody trained, to have everybody understand what needs to happen every year and as you come into spring, and then they could take over, and it wouldn't be so much work for them. And then they'd be able to do maybe this job, and then this job, and then this job.
Am I correct that the irrigation is not included?
Right, irrigation is not.
That wouldn't.
But you know that most of the plants that surround the library are not water-seeking plants, okay? All right, so you know.
More, Mr. Gore?
Yeah, real quick, I fully support this plan, but I would have to agree with Phil. We're going to need a letter of understanding before we can move forward, or else we're going to end up, they could file a grievance.
Right.
Or something like that.
I understand that.
It'd be part of the motion, Joe.
Yeah, it's part of the motion.
Big a part of the motion, contingent upon getting that letter.
Then I'm fine with
I am
it.
too.
Okay, I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the landscaping bid from Tom's Landscaping and Sod LLC in the amount of up to $7,400 for the year, contingent on receiving a letter of understanding from the union representing the maintenance workers.
Support.
Okay, motion is supported. Mr. Bruning, any more discussion?
Friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment,
Oh, hold on.
if you could add to make this 1 year
Okay,
agreement.
I'll accept that amendment. Todd?
I'm fine with that.
My amendment is just that if you wanted to add that it's part of the library millage,
Okay.
I think that's where it'd
Fine
be
with
coming
that.
from.
Funds are from the library.
Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Gore?
Aye?
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
No, and the motion passed 5-1. Item 8E, approve an agreement with James J. Architect to design a maintenance building. Mr. Jacobs.
Evening, Chair and Commissioners. Here tonight to answer any questions that you may have. I'm assuming you all know what the project is. If not, I can try to explain it as I understand it.
Yeah, so, we just, the main thing we wanted to know is basically what your costs are going to be to put everything together so this board has a good understanding, kind of where we're at with the building and.
Sure. So in discussing the need for the services, we put together an AIA agreement that has been sent, and I think, I'm assuming you all have a copy of that. So in that, it was based on an hourly approach to taking on the project with some flexibility then on which direction the project comes together in. So with what we understand the project to be and the budget that we were discussing, somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000, I think was what the goal was for the project. In looking at the space needs, that budget may be challenged by being a little on the low side to cover what costs are these days. But to get into that, we would need to go through the first portion of our phase of service in assessing completely the need for space that they presently have, which is presently housed in 2 to 3 structures that we're going to try to bring into one. And that equates right now to about 12,000 square feet of space need, just from on a couple of initial meetings. But we have not vetted that completely, as we've not been fully engaged yet. So to work in the parameters of that, what we would anticipate our fees to be is about $30,000 for the architectural component, $5,000 for the structural work that would need to be done there, and for the mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and fire protection, approximately $15,000 in services. Is to give you kind of a range of where I would expect those hourly fees to be based on that kind of a project scope. If that scope turns out to be a bigger project and it turns out to be a 15,000 or 20,000 square foot facility to meet your real needs, then the fees would adjust for the scope of work there. But to protect both the township and myself in that process, we were proposing an hourly approach to it. We certainly could look at hourly not to exceed and modify the agreement based on a number we both agree with, or proceed in this fashion and give reports as we move along where we're at monthly with the budget and the steps for your approvals for preliminary design and design development and the bidding set that would eventually come together for construction.
Any questions, Mr. Steiner?
Paul had forwarded us an email with some information that you provided, and you're talking $500,000-600,000 now, but your email had some projected numbers of well over $1 million. So we're double that 500-600. So what's the difference between this 500 and 600 you're talking about versus $1 million, $1.2 million, et cetera?
Well, the numbers, which is why I forwarded this on, because it appears to me that to produce the size facility that you're going to need to fit all of that equipment into, and the storage needs for the clerk's office to be combined into that same space, and replace the two different structures and some capacity that you have at the building now, it's going to dictate a square footage requirement that gets us into the numbers that you're seeing before you. There's probably some, it's all square foot based, so those are dangerous. We would refine that with actual takeoffs as we move along to establish a budget after we really go through that preliminary design phase. And I would say of the fees, approximately 15% of that is that initial phase for schematic design and programming. And at that point, we would refine this budget, working our way to try to keep it towards yours. But I think what we're finding from current pricing is that a pre-engineered metal building, similar to what we've discussed as an opportunity for the structure to be built from, would be in the range of $110 to $150 a square foot finished. That does not include site work. So that's just for your structure. So
that's pretty large right
to
there.
stay in your budget, you're going to be looking at something in 10,000 square feet or under. So we really need to assess what your needs are. And then you may have to, at that point, we could place the project on hold if need be to find additional funding if the budget of what you're seeing is true, or scale it back so that it could be added onto in time.
That was my next question, is about the space that we have available. You know, could we do something like that? Yeah. To number one, you'd want to create the site itself and have that, for the most part, prepared for an expansion.
Yep.
Then you would want to build a smaller building, living room, so the groundwork's already done.
Yes. Yeah, and pre-engineered structures are fairly easy to build as expandable structures. So it would just be a case of what we fit in. You know, if we're vacating one site that presently isn't owned by the township, then we have to move everything that's in there out. Some of the other structures we may be able to continue to operate out of, but at least the storage that the clerk's office is using for the equipment and voting paraphernalia, that would have to fit in the initial phase of construction.
Right.
And then the equipment that you presently have, we would need to find a way to squeeze it into a smaller structure and then make the elbow room later. As we
The
get
security of the clerk's department, you want everything secure, but obviously the clerk's stuff has to be extremely secured as well.
And so that's the process of that initial phase of design. And before we would proceed on any further with either something that could be this direction, we would expect to bring back those initial preliminary design plans with that budget for a plan, whether it be phase plan or one whole building approach, to the board for further approvals.
That's all.
Mr. Gore?
With the three buildings that we're currently utilizing for storage and space, do we own those, or are we renting those, or?
We rent them from the Drain Commissioner's office.
Okay, so we would have everything under one roof, so to speak. And I know, looking at the total projected cost on the email we got, it's $1.4 million, and that's not including overages, because we were down this road with overages with all the repairs to the fire department. I mean, would we spend $90,000 to move a power pole or something like that? That was unexpected. So we could be pushing close to $1.6 million, $1.7 million by the time it's done, potentially.
At a 10% contingency.
Yeah. So one big difference between that project and this is a greenfield build. So it should be able to not have as many hidden conditions. One exception would be what's under the ground out here. So it should be able to be much finer planned in a budgeting process than renovation on an existing facility. And as pointed out, there is a 10% contingency, which at this stage is probably a little bit conservative, but we would refine that with those preliminary estimates as we.
Joe, I mean, that was just preliminary, just to give an idea. I poked out 5 or 6 things right off the bat. We don't need 5 phones. That cuts off $50,000. We don't need,
So on the phone piece of it, that was $5 a square foot for all of those topics. So if we don't need all of those things, because it wasn't 5 phones, it was the phone system, the technology AV, which more is technology in this instance, the cameras, the security system, the fire alarm, running data out to that building. The service cost to set those services up, the DTE charge, that kind of stuff is part of that 60,000.
Well, 60 is accurate then.
So it probably is, but it's a square foot number right now. We need to refine those and find out what the real need is before we lock into it. I agree. I think there's areas here that we can trim this budget and are going to need to stay with anywhere close to where you want to be.
Did you find out the threshold to keep sprinklers out of it?
I was unable to get, I want to say for a building of this type, it's 10,000 square feet. If it's considered a service garage, which I don't believe it will be because you're not servicing the vehicles there per se, although a portion of the operations do, that would be limited to 5,000 square feet. So that needs to be, again, fine-tuned and checked with that. You also have a current facility that is suppressed, and so we would want to look with your insurance carrier too to find out if they're going to require or request that would be suppressed as well. So there's a couple other outside of code, some other things that you would want to double check with others too. If we can avoid the suppression system, that's a big chunk of a budget number here. Mechanicals are other, we know we need to condition portions of the building. The plan was to also put radiant heat through the full garage, which is what they have now. So depending on where we go with that, some of it could be cold storage, which might help with the mechanical budgets. So those are all the kind of topics that we really need to get further engaged with and help bring that number closer to what your expectation of a budget would be for it. But initially, based just on square footages and some pretty broad assumptions, I fear we're challenging your budget.
Any questions? Any more thoughts? I did place a phone call to Mr. Goldsmith to at least get an idea if the county would be willing to sell us the maintenance garage, and if they would, at what price. And that would give us another option to revamp our current one we're in and the cost it would be to do that. But I can tell you this, I mean, at some point, Trudy has all her election stuff in the old Lions Den. That's going to have work at some point.
I can tell you just an initial walkthrough, Mr. Pryor and I walked through with the maintenance crew to assess the square foot needs. That building has lived its useful life. So I think you could be into initially much more cost in renovating that facility than building this new facility, and you're still somewhat disconnected from your services too. So I think it's worth checking into, but initial reaction just having walked through it, it's going to take a complete overhaul, even some structural repairs.
So after you reached out to me, I did reach out to the county. I spoke with Mr. Bosonic. I put a call into David Thompson, our drain commissioner. That building, the original part of that building dates back to around 1949, 1950. And it was added on to over the years to accommodate a service facility. It was the old Whitman Ford dealership. And so there was a body shop in that old building until they moved across Whitman Drive and built that new one. There was the mechanics and the service center was in that, the showroom. In 1980, probably a little after Whitman Ford moved its facility down south on Lewis Avenue, Don Burton, who was the drain commissioner at that time, purchased on behalf of the drain commission and county agency, purchased that building. I think it was for $115,000. And his original plan was that South County Water be housed in there. And it was for a while, and I think the Bedford Township sewer operation some of that was carried on in there. And then the Consumers Energy building became available farther north on Lewis Avenue, and that was purchased, and that's where South County Water has been ever since for a long time. So the only thing that's left there of the counties is the bulk water filling station. but that won't be there long because that's going to be moved to the north at the southeast corner of Lewis and Erie for a parcel that was purchased for that purpose. So the county's not going to have a use for it. The county probably would be willing to sell it to the township. No idea. I think Mr. Bosonic mentioned having an appraisal done. I would agree that that building probably has lived its useful life. So if the township is interested in it, we would have to look at it in terms of, okay, you've got this structure there, what's it going to cost to renovate it? And you could get into a whole lot of hidden costs, but it's certainly, I agree with Mr. Peroni, it's to give you a comparison and give you an idea of, you know, okay, if we bought this and we could renovate it and it would meet our needs, what would the cost be there compared to building something new? So that's probably more than what you wanted, but I think it would be available for sale if the township was interested.
So towards that end, that's partly why the hourly approach, because we could accommodate within this, and I'm going to say that initially to go through some assessment of that building and what you might do here and do a comparison of the two approaches, I would say that we're probably looking at somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 in time, which would then move forward to whichever direction you go as the next step. So it's not a waste. You would be carrying forward the concept of one or the other into the next stage of development of the project.
I think it's a must that we move forward to give us an idea of what we have, ahead of us with a new building. That way we could compare apples to apples,
And at any point, if that dictates that it's a project that isn't going to move forward, that's where we end the services.
Well, and two, I believe that the maintenance building, I mean, if we were to buy the building, it's not like we tear it down and rebuild it. It's a block building. I mean, it's not crumbling apart. So, I mean, I definitely think it'd be something worth to look at. Personally, I think it's in a bad spot having our maintenance garage in downtown Temperance. I'd love to see it move out of there and move centrally located where we're here, but funds are going to be a big factor. So, what's the pleasure of the board?
So, just to clarify, if we're moving forward with this today, say go ahead and move forward, you are able to, like, whether that's an either or, but you're giving us this is what you're going to be, like, that's what you're going to work on, to let us know this is what you're going to actually be looking at. Yeah. And you're saying that is, your ballpark is 5 to 8 on that, more than likely. What would
preliminary design portion.
What would that timeline be? A couple months, or what would that be looking at, just as an overall, not from an hourly standpoint, just like what would your timeline be, like, for your firm?
Well, I think the comfortable time would be 2 to 3 months. We can certainly expedite that. I think the other question is, how soon do you want to try to get construction going if this looks like you're going to move forward with it? At this point in the year, your best option is next spring for a project to be constructed. It's possible.
But our only rush is the funds.
Yeah.
ARPA funds. So, I mean, we have to spend them, or we have to have them dedicated, I believe, by a certain date. So
yeah,
that's our only time. As far as getting out of that building, we don't have to get out of there.
Because with the planning process for site plan review, if we need to go through that, depending on what the project turns out to be, and to get agency approvals and all those kind of things to have ready for a bid set of documents to go out, the timing for a project of normal approach would be that you're looking at putting this out in late fall, early winter, that December, November timeline, and then bidding through January and starting construction as soon as the ground could break in the spring.
Mr. Supervisor, with respect to pursuing the building in Temperance, before we would have Jim expend any services on behalf of the township, I'd want to have some agreement in place with the county and county agency that they would be willing to sell at a certain price contingent upon our review and finding that that structure would be suitable for our use. In other words, we wouldn't be obligated to make the purchase, but we would have a price agreed upon, and that if Jim's study satisfies the board that you wanted to go in that direction as opposed to a new build here at the behind the township hall, then you're protected and you're not spending money that is useless. That's a useless expenditure, because as he stated, he can kind of segue that into the study into the new building. So just a thought, and if it's the board's pleasure, I'll certainly follow up on that and see what their mindset is.
Yeah, I would suggest if we do move forward, that it's moving forward in the direction only of a new building, and then once we had something along those lines, then you could let Mr. Jacobs know, okay, expand that operation if need be to give us both sides of it.
Okay, I look for a motion.
Does anybody have?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if anybody has an idea, do we want to put a not to exceed? And does anybody have an idea where you'd want to put that? Or what do you feel comfortable with?
Are you talking Jim's fees of 5 to 8?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's not going to exceed, is the 5 to 8. So we.
Or you say not to exceed 5, and it's not going to exceed 5. That's what I'm saying. Like, do you want to? If you want to do that.
That's why he said 5 to 8. He really doesn't.
He said 5 to 8, and then he's not tied to that. He's not tied to 5 to 8. If it comes back and it's, hey, we put a lot of time into this and it's over 5 to 8, that's not on him. That's on us.
If you do that, he has to agree to it. So, so whether or not he's prepared right now to agree to it, and I'm not advocating on his part, there has to be a meeting of the minds if you're going to have a not to exceed figure, or he performs hourly services and gives you an accounting during the normal course of business, and when you hit a certain amount, it stops, and you might be partway through the project. So.
What I would suggest is that you authorize not to proceed past preliminary design, and that if you want to put a cap on it, if we're just looking at this facility, I would be comfortable with a 5. If we add in the study of the other, then I would be more comfortable with the 8 to make sure that I get you all the answers that you need, and don't cut that short. But I think that probably the other would be to just state not to go past the preliminary design at this stage of services, and that should keep you in that range. Mm-hmm. And then certainly we can report on it as we move along, or just don't proceed past this point without authorization.
It's all going to depend on a number they throw at us. If they throw 100,000 at us, yeah, got to consider. If they throw 600,000, that's. Mr. Steiner.
I guess obvious that sooner or later, the township, we're going to have to take action on something. Mm-hmm. It's not one of these things you just keep kicking the can down the road and figure it's going to fix itself. So I think we do need to work on something here. Honestly, I think your new design, if you go out here, your preliminary is probably going to be almost cheaper than going to the other building trying to figure out how to renovate. So I think when he's saying 5 up front and only another 3 for the other one, I think he's probably in good shape. Obviously, taking what Mr. Goldsmith said, that we don't even want him to look at the other building unless we know that the county is willing to do something with. So if they tell us 50,000, 100,000, whatever, we know up front, and then we can tell Mr. Jacob which way to go. So, I mean, I agree we do need to do the analysis and get started instead of keep kicking the can down the road.
Okay, look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve an agreement with James S. Jacobs Architect to move forward with the preliminary process of the maintenance building.
I'll second with some amendment. Also to include what Mr. Goldsmith has suggested, and also give him authorization to talk to the county, that we do need to get a commitment, yes or no, from the county before Mr. Jacob would even look at that building and try to do any preliminary design work. His number would be a $5,000 to $8,000 as proposed. The one building would probably be $5,000. The second add-on would be up to $8,000 total.
Did you get all that in the amendment?
You would want that to come back to this board after we get a number.
Yeah.
We don't want him spending money going over to that building until we get a number.
That's correct. That's why I said we don't want him to even go over there.
Why don't we just not even discuss that building until it comes back here? And just focus on the new building right now.
That's what I would like, yeah.
Keep the motion clean, and then when the new building comes, the old building comes, we have everything.
You put it back on an agenda once Phil hears back.
Keep it clean.
Let me ask you, though, if we do it that way, it could cost us more money if we separate things, when you could be doing something simultaneously. When you have certain people that are specialized in this field, they could go out here, then they could go over there at the same time, instead of saying piecemeal it. I'm just trying to consolidate it and give him that option. If we get to go ahead, I mean, Mr. Goldsmith, how long do you think we could take to get an answer out of the county? I mean,
I think we'll get an answer fairly soon.
I think it'd be fairly quick. You know, it's either a yes or no for them.
I can tell you this, the last time we asked, they didn't want to sell it.
Yeah, but they didn't have their other location yet.
Yeah, plus they're moving that water.
You mean they didn't have their other location? This was what, 3 years ago when we inquired?
Did they have the Lewis and Erie? Did they have all that set up
you're
2 or
talking
3 years
about the
ago?
water move.
The water move. That's why I would think that they would be more open, because they've removed. They don't have any need at all, where they still had the need. Is that correct? Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. I think
That's why I think that they'd be more open now. They don't have any. There's nothing holding them.
At this point, I don't even know if they're putting a water station up. So. It's not been approved.
Yeah, I don't know what the timing is on that either, Paul. I know that's what the goal is to have a water station at Lewis and Erie. I think there is I think they're open to the idea of selling it. Mm-hmm. I talked to David Thompson before on this issue when we were involved with the Whitman Drive SAD. We had discussions over what the future of that building would be. And so if there's no bulk water filling station there, then the county's not using it at all.
They're not opening up ours anyways, ever. That's closed down and never reopened. I'm just saying the discussions are happening that they might not have one, period.
No.
If we're not using that building, if we're not leasing that building, if we told them, we'll be out in a year, we're going to build a new building, that building will be sold. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, I believe it can be sold to us if the price is agreeable and if Mr. Jacobs' investigation is favorable to renovating it. Then the board's going to have to decide, do we want to have this remote location or do we want to consolidate everything here at the Township Hall property, compare the costs, and go from there.
Just make a motion.
Well, there's already a motion.
And a support.
Right, but okay, so we have a motion and a support.
I don't accept the amendment unless that was, I don't think, unless like restated. I want it.
Why don't you restate the motion?
My motion would be moving forward with the building here until we hear back, and then we can communicate if we need him to investigate further into the Lewis Avenue building.
Okay, I'll support that. Okay, motion is.
Let me
He's
ask,
got support.
Jim, a concern was raised that would that extra 3,000 cap still be available if the township board wanted to pursue the purchase of the Temperance building. I guess I am putting you on the spot.
Yeah, that's fine.
Would that still be available?
I think if it occurs shortly, either after the conclusion of this piece of it or within it, yes. But if it occurs 3 months after, then I'm, going to have to re-engage and other things could happen there. So I said, if it stays close, we can carry forward with things. Two components that would be brought potentially into investigation of that facility, which may be additional expense, as I've had time to sit here and think about some things, would be a mechanical assessment and having the mechanical engineer come over and perform part of his services during that time, as well as potentially cost for an environmental assessment of the structure and the properties for your purchase.
There's definitely going to have to be an environmental assessment.
Yeah.
done for-
So there's other costs that would not be mine that would be potentially part of that. But as far as the 3,000 for our continued study of that addition, I would think that we would be able to still live to that if it's done close to the same time.
That's why
I could tell you there's issues with the property.
Well, that's why I don't even.
tanks
The
in
price
there
would have to
when it
be.
was
The price would have to be right, or it's not going to make sense. That's why I'm saying I just want to move forward with this current building, the preliminary, and if we come back and the price is right, and that it will have to be.
It would have to
Or
be
else
contingent on an
there's
environmental
no way
coming
it's going to
back.
be a better situation. There's no way.
So I'll say one more thing and I'll be quiet. The motion that was made, did that have the not to exceed $5,000 in it?
No, it was just the to the preliminary.
Okay, well, he's offering not to exceed $5,000 to do
I
a
added that
study.
as the friendly.
Okay, got it.
And again, I know what you're saying about being clean, but I still think it's clean if we get the approval and if we get a number from the county, why wait 2 or 3 weeks, depending on when we get the approval, and tell him 2 or 3 weeks later, oh, now you can start. Whereas if we say, okay, we met the requirements, let's go ahead and let him continue. If you want to go with that way, I'll go with that.
I could go either way, honestly.
That's what I'm saying. If you want to go the other way, fine. If not, I just thought it'd be easier to, it's one vote, one process. You only go so far as step one of the process. If the building pans out where it could be used, that's step two that's already been approved. And that won't be over the $3,000 extra anyway. But I'll go either way with it, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'll keep it with as is, standalone building here, taking the not to exceed 5, and then we can revisit as we hear back in the next. And I would assume that the same thing. Yeah, if they take 3 months to get back, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion.
Try to have
of
something
support.
for you by the next meeting on that.
Could you call the roll, please?
No, I know the motion.
You have his motion, you just restated it.
I've written 3 different motions here.
Do you want me to restate them?
Redo your
Is
motion.
your motion to approve the preliminary design service for the new building not to exceed 5,000?
Yes. What were the other 2 options? I think yes.
There was
Now I'm
talking
second
to-
guessing
Oh,
myself.
she was listening to the friendlies.
I was listening to all
Okay,
the
yes,
friends.
Okay.
yes, just
So
as is.
I've supported that.
Well, no,
Rick supported it.
Mr.
That was the
Steiner
first one.
supported
Okay, so Rick supported that. Any more discussion?
without amendment. Okay.
Good point.
Well, the only amendment was I added the cost. That wasn't
5.
initial.
Okay. And that's accepted, which you had.
Call the roll.
Mr. Montroy,
Aye.
Mr. Steiner,
Aye.
Mr. Gore,
Aye.
Mr. Bruning.
No.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni.
Aye, the motion passed 5-1. That was painful. Got through it, though. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, item 8G, approve an agreement with Manica Smith Group for Fire Station 3 pavement repair project and direction on how to proceed. Mr. Bennett? So the board knows that this was something we went through ARPA funds with. There's an issue with the fire station with the new fire truck turning around in the back of Fire Station 3, tearing up the asphalt. So I met with them. They gave us a couple different options. I'm not sure if option 1, and you could give me your opinion, is the best option, because I'm not sure if the other pavement getting ridden on so much is going to tear up as well. But you have two different options. So go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. For those that I haven't met previously, Eric Bennett with Mannequin Smith. Those that I have met, it's good to see you again. So, yeah, we had been requested to come out, take a look at it. I think actually Brad Shealy in our office met with the chief and with Supervisor Peroni and came up with what we thought were two reasonable options, and then put a proposal in front of you this evening to move either option 1 or option 2 forward. From our, for the level of effort that we have to put into it, either option 1 or option 2, there's not a great difference. So that's why we put the proposal in front of you tonight with the two options. So the action item tonight is the proposal for us to move forward, but we need a little bit of direction whether we're going towards option 1 or option 2. And just to draw your attention, we were able to utilize past plans for the fire station, and option 1 is really the area that is damaged the worst right now, that is exceeded its life expectancy structurally based on the turning movements and that. And if you go out there, you can see them pretty distinctly. And it just the pavement wasn't, the overall pavement section was not designed for what the use is currently. It's just exceeded its useful life. So option 1, take care of the issue at hand immediately in the area that is of greatest concern. Option 2 would be the option to address the entire area out there where any of those traffic movements are happening as the engines are coming back in, and have a clean, nice pavement in the back area. The one thing to say is that we are proposing to put a concrete pavement in there as opposed to asphalt. So you're not going to have the sliding and the rutting and things of that that's going to happen. But with that, there needs to be, we'll remove the existing asphalt is in our design is what we would propose, have a contractor bid all of this, come out and then remove the existing asphalt, push the stone that is there out of the way, take an additional 4 inches of soil out, bring back in the stone, which we believe is about 4 inches, add an additional 4 inches, and then you would have 8 inches of concrete pavement on it, which would be a sufficient pavement section for its current use that we think you'd get longevity out of. So it's not quite as easy as take the asphalt out, put concrete in, and move on. Taking out the 4 inches of asphalt or so that's there isn't sufficient for what's being used, so we need that added depth. So a couple steps to it. It's not something that can be done in a day or two. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we wanted to give you options for whatever the pleasure might be to move it forward.
Any comments, questions from board member, Mr. Gore?
So option 1 looks like just a Band-Aid fix to me. Option 2, I know it's a little bit more expensive, but it seems a more logical way to go. Because if we don't, we're going to be replacing more concrete or asphalt here in a few more years probably.
I agree.
And we did
out of ARPA funds, right?
And we did, because of that reason, depending on what the pleasure of the board was going to be, option 1 is very much rectangular, can be added on to later. Is it ideal? No. Is it possible? Yes. So I would agree with you.
Mr. Steiner?
I was going to say too, I mean, I think the 17,500 is probably the best idea, and I like your approach though, putting a good road bed, if you want to call it that, underneath, it gives you that additional base. And I don't need the chief to come up, but if you want to nod your head, do you think the 17.5 is really what's required for that maneuverability, that especially that big unit? I figured it was a yes. So.
Option 1, option 2.
You know, I think at the time when we needed a Station 3 in place, we were seeing community expansion. The board at the time did get the building approved. We were in a car lot at the time. So I agree, the lot just is not what we're using it for. So for the full fix, it would be to complete the project.
I think we're better to do it right the first time.
Because eventually we would have to go back and do it again.
Right. Yep. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Montre?
I'll just restate what I stated when we voted on this initially at ARPA meetings, that I'm just opposed one way or the other. I still think that there's easier options as far as like what I've already discussed about fire engines backing in and off the road the same way as they do in Toledo. But so I don't have an opinion one way or the other on the actual project.
Any more thoughts? Yeah, look for Ms. Hirschberger.
So the original ARPA funds that we approved for this were 125. So we're looking at 115.5 more. So the board's aware of that. And then the 50-foot remove and replace curb, couldn't that come out of Metro? It's road right of way.
Could, but personally, I'd like to see the Metro Act funds used in, I don't know, downtown Temperance or areas that are.
So much Metro funds.
I know.
We haven't touched it.
I
mean,
I
this
just called
small
Mr.
amount
Montre
we
about
could
that
use.
last week. I said we need to put it on the agenda and get those moving and get them spent.
Do something with them.
I mean, yeah, we could use it for that, but I just personally, I'd rather see the areas that are neglected and beautify downtown Temperance with maybe some lampposts and some flower pots, or I don't know, do something nice, plant some trees, spruce it up, or do something. But
But you can't use Metro funds for all that.
Drew, do you know what the number is on the Metro?
300.
Don't, off the top of my
300.
head.
It's a lot.
I think that's probably a good suggestion. I mean, I guess if we want to go forward, we could vote on the proposal to move, and then it's a separate vote to tell where that money comes from at a different point.
Or we could do it right now at this meeting and be done with the whole project.
Make the motion, Trudy. Or Rick.
You better, because I'm not looking at the bigger one.
So I'll make the motion to move forward with the parking lot replacement for Fire Station 3, the proposal of option 2 with the 17,500 square feet. The initial dollar amount as proposed would come out of the ARPA funds to go to the larger section, which adds, it adds 9,000 square feet. Those additional funds to cover that would come out of the Metro funds.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a support? Support. Support of Mr. Bruning. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montre?
Nay.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 5-1. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay, item 8H, approve a third resolution to establish costs and fees pursuant to the Bedford Cemetery Ordinance. Ms. Hirschberger?
So before you is the new costs that I would like the board to approve. As it stands right now, our costs are not covering the maintenance time and hours. Sometimes they have to put in overtime or come in, put in overtime, and the costs that we're charging are not enough to cover all of that. So I would like to up some of our costs to what is before you. And the times would be before 2 p.m. So if we do run into overtime, it would be covered in the next fee category.
Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the third resolution to establish the costs and fees pursuant to the Bedford Township Cemetery Ordinance as presented.
Support. Okay, motion is support of Mr. Bruning. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Montre?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed. 6-0. Okay, item 8I, approve a resolution to expand the veterans section at the Bedford Memorial Garden Cemetery. Ms. Hirschberger?
So we want to expand the Veteran Center. It'll go up 2 more rows, as you can see on the map above the dotted line. Answer the question, if you buy one of the outside graves, which a lot of people have purchased now, they put their wives next to them. A lot of them, if they're cremated, they can still be buried together. The veterans will even do the headstone, the free marker they do with the wife's name on it. And you could have a full burial with ashes on top of that, or 2 cremains can go in one grave. We're not against that. But Mr. Frederick is right. If it's 2 full burials, you would have to have an outside one to be buried next to each other.
Okay, questions? Okay, I look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to expand the Veterans section at Bedford Memorial Garden Cemetery as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion supported, Mr. Bruning. Any more discussion? Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Bruning?
Aye.
Mr. Gore?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 6-0. Okay, comments from the public? Come on up.
I am Marcia Oberleiter with the Alzheimer's Association of Monroe and Lenawee Counties, and I just want to say thank you for your support of the Alls In team tonight. Alls In has been a top team at our annual Walk to End Alzheimer's here in Monroe County for over 5 years. And Jackie particularly has a personal connection to the Alzheimer's disease, having worked with many people with Alzheimer's. So on behalf of the association and their team, I just wanted to thank you sincerely for your approval. They will hopefully make over $10,000 with their fireworks raffle, and I'm really appreciative and happy to be here tonight to support them. Thank you.
Any more comments?
Hi, I'm Jody Russ, 1273 Winding Way. First of all, thank you for approving the landscaping thing for the Bedford Library. I think it'll help make the library look beautiful on the outside like it does on the inside. But secondly, I just wanted to do a congratulations to Bedford's own Joey Weimer. If you guys haven't already heard that, he's a 2017 Bedford graduate, made it to the MLB this week. So he's playing for the Milwaukee Brewers, and he got a hit in his first 3 games up. He's batting over 300. He threw somebody out at second base, playing right field. Couldn't be prouder of that kid. My son played with him in that 2017 team. So we're good friends with him and proud of Joey, and just wanted to make sure everybody knows that that's happening. I'm a Brewers fan this season since the Tigers are very pathetic to watch.
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. I approve of Mr. Lamkowski, but again, we do have a township policy, and I do believe that our committee applications should have a familial disclosure on them, especially in regards to other family members on committees. The follow-up for the warranty on the chipper, I'd like to know about that. And Rick was right. The last meeting, the motion was made to buy. The packet said it was in the maintenance budget from 2022. But it was not included in the motion, and I find that highly irregular in such a purchase. As the concerns with the roundabout, there is also another issue that we need to focus on, and that is the DDA. There's an awful lot of money, and those meetings need to be televised, especially since it's off hours when they hold those. Little history, the library and the township used to be tenderly and perfectively taken care of by the beautification committee. It was a group of master gardeners that did it. Our maintenance people should not be gardeners. And if that's what we're going to turn them into, we need to really increase their staffing. It's just really not fair that that's what they have to deal with when they have all of the parks that they have to tend to. So the garden club took care of the back. The herb club took care of the one section in the back at the library, but that's the bottom line. The beautification committee took care of the front and of the library and here at the Township Hall, and they did a damn good job.
Lamar Frederick, 3254 Deer Creek Drive. I did want to hear from Mr. Jacobs on how they were going to go forward with this project, but I'm surprised it wasn't offered out for bid. Here's $1.5 million to a $2 million building that's going to be designed, and I would have thought you might have sent out a request or a bid on who's going to do the design. There's a number of engineering company. That doesn't mean he isn't any good, because I've seen him, he's seen his work, but I'm surprised you didn't bid it. Next, we hear about ARPA funds and then the Metro funds, and pretty soon you guys are using all these like candy jars. I told you that before. You buy a chipper and all of a sudden it's now being paid from ARPA. That wasn't what it was originally intended to be done. So, it's a nice fund, and I hear the supervisor tell everybody how great he is and how all these things are being done. Well, when you got a $3 million candy jar in Metro funds and $1 million a year more in tax money, you can do a lot more than the previous supervisors did. So I don't want to hear any more about how great he is. Thank you.
Any more comments? Stop clicking your pen, Lamar. All right, go ahead.
Josh Senior Court, 7948 Wiseman Road, Lambertville. Wasn't mentioned during public comment the last meeting, but I feel like it needs some attention. But during the March 7th meeting at the end, there was comment time for board members. And this was pertaining to our state representative. The supervisor said, yeah, probably not the best idea to elect a guy that's still serving at the same time, and then later on said people elect him so you get what you get. I find that very offensive when talking about someone's active duty status. I have family that has served in the military, including a brother almost got killed in Afghanistan, so I took very offense to that, talking about someone's active duty status like that. I think a lot of people in this community were very offended by that and does not sit well with them, and I feel like there's an apology that is owed. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any more comments from the public? You good, Lamar? Okay. Mr. Steiner?
Last meeting I was obviously not here. Work duty called me out of town, so I couldn't be here. The one thing, though, that I do want to mention is last Wednesday there was a budget meeting that was called. There was a notice that went out in January, and I sent a message back then questioning a 9 o'clock meeting on a Wednesday to discuss committee of the whole budget. I was told it was primarily for the department heads to come in and explain what their requests were for their budget. Then we got another notice recently that we were going to have a meeting last Wednesday, a 9 a.m. budget meeting. Obviously, we have 4 trustees on this board that have full-time jobs. I think one of them made it, but was still a half hour or so late. The other 2, I don't think, made it besides me. It's pretty tough to call a budget meeting on a Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. when the majority of your board has full-time jobs. So I took a little offense to that. I even sent a message back saying, are we really having a meeting at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday? I got no reply from anybody. So I don't think we should ever have a budget meeting that includes the committee of the whole at 9 o'clock in the morning. They should be after business hours at 7 p.m. Also, the public deserves to be able to come to those meetings as well.
Did you add me into that email?
I replied to all.
Because I don't recall that.
I was sent from our finance manager, and I believe everybody was on it, but I replied to all.
Okay, Mr. Montry?
Yeah, the only thing I had was also to congratulate and recognize Joey Weimer and all of his success. He's a great kid. Couldn't happen to a better kid who's worked for everything he has. That's all I had.
Okay, Mr. Gore?
Nothing for me. Just everybody have a good couple weeks.
Mr. Bruning?
Nothing for me. Everybody have a good night, good weekend, good Easter. Everything's going good.
Okay. Ms. Hirschberger?
I want to let the residents know that this Friday is Good Friday, so the township will be closing at noon. And then April 18th, I will be at the high school to register the seniors. That's all I have.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry you took offense to that, but when you run for a position and you're currently active duty and you tell people you're retiring and then you get sent off the day you're elected for months and months and months, I take offense to that. Because when we elect somebody to do a job, we expect them to be in Lansing doing the job, not serving in Virginia, not being able to show up to vote. So I take offense to that. So take it how you will, but I have nothing against anybody that serves. Very thankful and proud of everybody that serves. But we elected somebody to serve in Lansing, period. So warranties, 1 year on the chipper, 3 years on the whole chipper, 3 years on the engine. So there is a warranty on that. It would be nice if we could find maybe something within the veterans cemeteries. I know Temperance Action Committee has $10,000 committed to a veterans monument that they raised roughly 10 plus years ago from the charity cruise event. So it'd be a good idea maybe for you guys to reach out to Ms. Hirschberger, see if you can figure out a way to spend that monument money. $20,000 that you have with the Temperance Action Committee for downtown Temperance, so possibly with some of these projects we're talking about, you guys could step up and partner and get that money spent, because it does no good sitting in a bank account for 10, 15 years. So if you have any ideas, reach out to the Temperance Action Committee. If the money was put into ARPA, Mr. Steiner, it needs to be rectified if that's not what the board wanted to do with it. We've all agreed upon how we want the monies to be spent. It's not a cookie jar like Mr. Frederick keeps saying. We agreed to put the monies in certain spots. If it got put in ARPA, and it shouldn't have, we need to rectify it and make it right. If it was budgeted in maintenance, which I believe it was, it should have come out of the budget. So I'll talk to Mr. Miller and Ms. Hirschberger if you could do the same tomorrow and get it rectified. So it's not a big conspiracy or everybody's trying to be sneaky. It's Mr. Miller put it in the wrong spot, so we'll fix it. So thank you for bringing it up. We're getting Pat and his staff certified to spray fertilizer. I think it's going to be a good idea with a lot of our grounds, park-wise, to start killing the weeds. Most of the time this summer we're cutting weeds that grow in 3 days this tall. So they've never been certified, so we're getting them to Monroe Community College to get certified for that. So out front, we are removing a lot of the old bushes and shrubs and painting the trellis, going to be power washing the concrete, sealing it, getting it all cleaned up. We're going to pull a lot of the old bushes out front here and plant a lot of perennials and put a stone border, like just sixes around the edge, front edge. Just clean it up, show our building, and some of these bushes are getting overgrown and getting ugly. So other than that, I have no more. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn. Okay.